So I want you to imagine for a second that the global economy is like this massive, towering skyscraper.
Okay. I'm with you.
Right. So right now, the corporate penthouse suite has basically just stepped into an express elevator that is shooting straight up. I mean, they are breaking records, and it's entirely powered by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, riding the AI wave.
Exactly. But at the exact same moment, the foundation that the entire building sits on, the massive middle-class workforce, that foundation, is suddenly turning into quicksand.
Oh, wow. That's a phenomenal visual.
It's terrifying, right? And that exact tension is what we are digging into today. So we are so glad you're here with us for this custom-tailored deep dive.
Yeah, because we are definitely not just looking at, a routine tech update today. We're looking at the blueprint for a proposed economic paradigm shift, one that's basically designed to stop that exact skyscraper from collapsing.
Okay, let's unpack this. So our source material today is this incredibly ambitious, freshly released press release from EON AI Ventures, and it's dated April 2026.
Fresh off the presses. Totally. And the mission for today's deep dive is to explore this massive structural collision that's happening in India right now.
Right.
It's essentially a story about what happens when the unstoppable, accelerating force of AI automation just crashes head-on into a massive, highly educated, and rapidly growing workforce.
Yeah, and it's a situation that forces a complete rethink of what education, employment, and human value even look like at a civilizational scale.
I mean, we're talking big picture here.
Huge. The numbers we are looking at demand nothing less than a complete structural overhaul.
Right. So to really understand the radical solution proposed by EON AI Ventures, we first have to understand the sheer, honestly terrifying scale of the problem they're trying to solve.
It's pretty stark.
Yeah. In this press release, they lay out some deeply conflicting statistics that just illustrate this tension perfectly. So on one hand, AI is driving an 11.5% boost in productivity.
Which is huge. It's a massive injection of efficiency. Companies are getting faster, leaner, and their profit margins are absolutely soaring because they can just do so much more with so much less.
What's fascinating here is how this specific dynamic creates what economists call a K-shaped economy.
A K-shaped economy.
Yeah, so if you visualize the letter K, you have this vertical line and then two branches splitting off, one shooting steeply up and one pointing sharply down.
Oh, I see.
Right, and the press release describes this happening in real time across India's economic landscape. The upward arm of that K represents the corporations.
The penthouse suite in the skyscraper.
Exactly. They are leveraging this 11.5% AI productivity boost to drive just, exponential profit growth. They are winning big.
Which means the downward arm has to be the middle-class workforce.
Unfortunately, yes.
Specifically, like the people who actually built that IT sector, right? The programmers, the customer service agents, the financial analysts.
Yeah, they are the ones who generated that initial wave of productivity.
But because the AI is learning to do those tasks autonomously, they are effectively pricing themselves out of a job in the process.
Exactly.
So the wealth isn't trickling down at all. It is cleanly and sharply dividing the winners from the losers.
That is exactly the mechanism driving the crisis. I mean, the text notes that 25 to 30% of current IT and business process outsourcing roles, the massive BPO sector.
Right.
Well, they are at risk of automation by 2028.
2028, that's not a distant hypothetical future. That is right around the corner.
It's literally knocking on the door. We are talking about millions of previously secure jobs just evaporating.
And when you look at the ground reality, like the data from the India Skills Report 2026 makes that downward arm of the K look incredibly steep.
Oh, the numbers are brutal.
They are. You have 12 million new entrants pouring into the job market every single year. But simultaneously, there has been a 25 to 30% decline in campus placements.
So the pipeline is just
It's drying up. The traditional pipeline, the one where you go to a university, get your degree, and step straight into a stable, entry-level corporate job, it's just vanishing.
And the complexity deepens when you examine the readiness of those new graduates, because the report reveals a really striking misalignment. 65% of graduates completely lack the skills actually required by today's rapidly evolving tech landscape.
So you have a shrinking pool of entry-level opportunities.
Yep.
And a vast majority of the incoming workforce isn't structurally equipped to compete for the few roles that are left.
It's a total systemic failure of the traditional pathway.
Right. I mean, the 245 billion rupee outsourcing sector, with its 5.4 million IT professionals, it has been this incredibly reliable economic engine for India for decades.
It's a bedrock.
But reading through these statistics, it feels like that massive, reliable engine has just been swapped out for a totally different fuel type while the car is still moving on the highway.
That's a great way to put it.
You've got families heavily burdened with EMIs, equated monthly installments for their homes and cars, plus massive educational loans.
Yeah. The debt is real.
And going back to a traditional university to get like another generic degree, it simply won't work anymore. The system is structurally failing the people it was built to elevate.
Which brings us to the core tension of this entire deep dive.
Right.
Since those traditional linear reskilling pathways are failing, how do you actually prevent a complete economic collapse of that newly displaced middle class?
You can't use the tools of the past to solve a completely unprecedented future.
Precisely. You have to totally reframe what work actually means.
And that brings us to the core of the source material. The solution EON AI Ventures is introducing, which they call the Sovereign Human Initiative.
It's the Sovereign Human Initiative.
Yeah, it's a bold, almost philosophical name, right?
Yeah.
And its stated mission is to transition people from dependency-based roles to a proprietor-driven economy.
The text is very deliberate with those terms, actually, and we really need to define them to understand the mechanism here.
Okay, lay it on us.
So a dependency-based role is your classic outsourced job. As an employee, your entire livelihood is dependent on a massive, distant corporation to hand you a specific task.
Like writing routine Python code, processing payroll, or answering customer service queries.
Exactly. And the fatal flaw in that model is that when an AI system can suddenly execute that task faster and cheaper, your dependency immediately becomes your vulnerability.
Right. You are entirely dispensable in that setup.
Totally.
So the initiative wants to turn these dependent workers into proprietors. And a proprietor is someone who owns their output, who controls their own value, and who drives their own tech-enabled business.
That's the pivot.
And the press release is claiming some absolutely wild metrics to make this happen. Like, they state they can reduce major family education and transition costs by 90 to 99%.
99%.
Yeah. And even more surprisingly, they claim they can compress the income transition timeline, that agonizing time it takes to go from losing your job to making a living in a new advanced field.
Right.
They say they can compress that from a grueling 18 months down to just 90 days.
Those numbers, if they're actually achievable, they represent a total disruption of the traditional educational and economic model.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Because I have to be honest, I am looking at these claims and they sound incredible on paper. But how do you practically turn millions of displaced customer service reps or junior programmers into high-level tech-enabled proprietors in just 90 days?
It's a big leap.
It is. And dropping costs by 99%. I mean, that sounds like science fiction.
Well, it is a very healthy skepticism to bring to a press release of this magnitude, but the text actually provides a very detailed synthesis of the mechanism they plan to use.
Okay, I'm listening.
It fundamentally comes down to how they view this displaced workforce. They do not view them as a liability or a burden. They view them as a massive reservoir of, quote, untapped cognitive potential.
Untapped cognitive potential. So they aren't treating them like obsolete machinery.
Precisely. These are not people lacking intelligence, ambition, or business acumen. They are simply trapped in legacy systems that no longer serve them.
Right.
The philosophy here is not about handing people new, slightly different entry-level jobs. It is about freeing them from outdated models to democratize innovation. I mean, think about it. They are taking people who already understand corporate environments, who know how supply chains work, who understand customer pain points.
Yeah, they have the real world contact.
Exactly, and giving them AI-powered tools that multiply their capabilities 100-fold. You do not need 18 months to learn how to code from scratch if the AI is doing the heavy lifting of the actual syntax generation.
Oh, wow.
You only need 90 days to learn how to expertly pilot that AI to solve complex business problems.
Ah, I see. It is the transition from being the person doing the typing to being the architect directing the machine.
That's it entirely.
But to achieve those wild 90-day transition timelines and 99% cost reductions, the underlying technology has to be fundamentally different from like static traditional online courses.
Oh, absolutely.
We are not talking about sitting in front of a laptop, watching pre-recorded lecture videos for 2 years and taking multiple choice quizzes.
Oh, no.
We need to look at the specific tech stack EON AI Ventures is deploying to act as the engine room for this sovereign human initiative.
Yeah, the technology is the actual bridge between that vulnerable dependency model and the empowered proprietor model. And they have structured this technological engine into 3 very distinct interactive components.
Okay, let's translate these from PR buzzwords into plain English.
Good idea.
So the first component is called EON Genesis. The press release describes this as an intelligence ingestion engine.
Which sounds very sci-fi.
Right. But in plain English, this is basically an AI system that captures institutional expertise and rapidly clones it into interactive 3D virtual experiences.
Right.
So instead of a company losing all its tribal knowledge when a senior engineer retires, Genesis ingests how that expert thinks and operates and immediately turns those processes into a 3D training environment.
It replaces static theoretical learning with captured interactive mastery.
And that ingestion engine is paired directly with the second component, which is EON Brainy.
Brainy. This is a profoundly important tool for the Indian context, actually. EON Brainy is a multi-language AI coaching tool.
Multi-language?
Yes. When you consider India's incredible linguistic diversity across dozens of states, bridging the rural and urban divide is absolutely paramount. You cannot just release a sophisticated platform in English and expect to reach the entirety of the displaced workforce.
Because that would just reinforce the K-shaped divide. You'd only be helping the people who already have advantages.
Precisely. The mechanism behind Brainy is that it provides adaptive training algorithms that can actively coach a displaced IT worker in their native language.
Wow.
Yeah, it acts like an ever-present pair programmer or mentor. If a user makes a mistake in the virtual environment, the AI doesn't just grade them.
Like giving them a C-.
Right, it doesn't just do that. It identifies the exact cognitive gap and corrects it in real time, in their native tongue.
That is incredible.
That immediate personalized feedback loop is what drastically accelerates their time to competency.
It democratizes access to the retraining itself. And all of this ingested intelligence and AI coaching lives inside the third component, which is the sentient world platform.
The sentient world platform.
Yeah, this is described in the text as a next-generation immersive environment that delivers verified credentials through practical, hands-on mastery rather than theoretical exams.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is vital to look at EON's background to understand why they are leaning so heavily into these immersive 3D environments.
Okay, let's look at it.
EON AI Ventures was founded by the leadership behind EON Reality, and they are an organization with 25 years of experience in XR, extended reality and immersive learning solutions.
Oh, so they've been around.
Yeah, they are not a brand new software startup just jumping on the recent generative AI bandwagon. They have spent a quarter century building platforms specifically for environments where precision is non-negotiable.
Oh, the press release makes a really sharp, critical distinction there. They point out that generic consumer AI tools, like the kind we might use on our phones, might give you 80% quality.
Right.
And 80% is totally fine if you were like drafting a quick email or outlining a blog post. But high-stakes enterprise operations, the actual work that drives a national economy, like managing a power grid, coding financial infrastructure, or overseeing aerospace logistics, those require absolute 100% precision.
Exactly. You cannot have an AI hallucinate a critical piece of server code or mismanage a hospital's database.
No.
That last 20% of mastery is the hardest part to achieve, and it is where all the economic value actually lies. Immersive learning, actually performing the complex task in a high-fidelity 3D environment where the physics and logic mirror the real world. That is how you close that gap and ensure that 100% precision.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
If we compare this to how we usually think about reskilling, traditional methods are basically like reading a massive static manual about how to fly a commercial airliner.
Right.
You can read the book, you can memorize the terminology, and you can pass a written test, but you are not a pilot until you are actually in the air.
Exactly.
What EON is doing with these 3D immersive tech platforms is essentially skipping the manual entirely. They are putting you directly into a high-fidelity flight simulator from day one.
From day one.
And because it has that active AI coaching from EON Brainy, that simulator is dynamically tailoring itself exactly to the missing 20% of skills that you specifically need to learn.
The mechanism of a simulation allows you to fail safely. You can iterate rapidly, experience every possible edge case scenario without real-world consequences, and achieve genuine muscle memory mastery in 90 days instead of reading about it for 18 months.
So that's how they do it.
Yeah, that continuous, safe iteration loop is the actual engine driving the compression of the transition timeline.
Okay, so the mechanics make sense. We have a revolutionary tech stack that acts like a personalized flight simulator, and we have a compelling philosophical framework about moving from vulnerable, dependent workers to sovereign proprietors.
Yep.
But to pull this off, you can't just flip a switch nationwide. I mean, grand ideas mean absolutely nothing without a concrete deployment strategy on the ground in a country as massive and complex as India.
No, absolutely not.
How does this actually reach the people who need it most?
Well, the source material is highly pragmatic about this. They have outlined a targeted deployment strategy to ensure this actually scales without collapsing under its own weight.
So they aren't trying to boil the ocean on day one.
Exactly.
They are starting where the bleeding is worst. The text points to an immediate rollout in high displacement corridors, specifically calling out South India's IT belt.
Right.
They are deploying this technology straight to the epicenter of the disruption, right where the highest concentration of IT and BPO workers are currently facing the sharp edge of automation risks.
But here's the thing. Even if you train tens of thousands of people in South India using a brilliant 3D simulator, how do you actually prove to the global market that they possess these new skills?
That's a huge hurdle.
It is. And that is where their integration with the Global Diploma Alliance comes in, because an immersive training program is only as valuable as the market's willingness to recognize it.
Right.
By tying the mastery achieved in the sentient world directly to verified, industry-aligned credentials, they're building a legitimate, globally recognized pathway. It ensures this isn't just an isolated walled garden of education, but a bridge to actual economic opportunity.
And to scale that opportunity across the entire country, they are aligning with existing massive government infrastructure.
Smart move.
Yeah, the text mentions integrating with initiatives like Startup India and the MSME sector, which stands for micro, small, and medium enterprises. They are embedding this training into the actual arteries of Indian business development.
And this is exactly where we must revisit that staggering cost barrier we discussed earlier.
Oh, right.
Because it is the linchpin that makes this entire rollout possible. Traditional higher education or elite reskilling programs in India can be astronomically expensive, sometimes costing upwards of 15 lakh.
Wow. Okay, wait. To put that in perspective for our global listeners, 15 lakh is what, 1.5 million rupees?
Yes, 1.5 million rupees.
For the average displaced worker who has just lost their job and has a family to feed, 1.5 million rupees is a completely insurmountable barrier to entry. It is a locked door.
Totally.
But the text claims this EON initiative will drop that education and credentialing cost down to just 35,000 rupees.
That drop from 1.5 million down to 35,000 rupees is the 90 to 99% cost reduction in action.
It's just wild.
By heavily relying on AI and virtual environments, rather than physical brick-and-mortar campuses and human lectures, the marginal cost of training plummets. It transforms access to cutting-edge AI training from a hoarded luxury for the elite into a massive, scalable commodity for the displaced middle class.
But the most vital part of this rollout, the true mechanism that empowers the entire proprietor system, is what they call the VAR framework.
The VAR framework.
Yeah, the value-added reseller network.
Yeah.
This is how they actually decentralize the entire economy.
It is a brilliant distribution strategy. I mean, think about what the VAR framework means in practice. They are not merely teaching displaced workers how to use AI so they can go beg for a job at a slightly different mega corporation.
Right, that would defeat the whole purpose.
Exactly. They are training them to become licensed value-added resellers of the EON AI solutions themselves. They are essentially creating independent businesses that are equipped to build and upgrade other businesses.
Okay, let's visualize that mechanism.
Right.
Imagine you are a displaced IT worker in Chennai. Under the Sovereign Human Initiative, you don't just learn how to operate the new tech.
Yeah.
You actually get the license, the platform, and the capability to walk into local businesses in your state.
Right.
Maybe a regional logistics company, a local healthcare provider, or a mid-sized manufacturing plant, and you consult, sell, and deploy these AI and intelligence ingestion platforms directly to them.
Wow.
You are no longer answering tickets for a foreign tech giant. You are a localized tech proprietor bringing AI transformation to your own community.
You become the architect of local innovation, and this solves the distribution bottleneck for EON, too.
Oh, how
They do not need to hire and manage 10,000 salespeople across a country with dozens of distinct languages and cultural nuances.
Oh, right.
Instead, they're turning the displaced workforce into an army of empowered, tech-enabled entrepreneurs who innately understand their local context, speak the local language, and have deep ties to their local business communities.
That makes total sense.
They are the ones actually building the proprietor economy from the ground up, block by block.
Amazing. So as we synthesize the journey of this entire deep dive, the overarching narrative we are looking at is incredibly profound. India is facing a terrifying K-shaped economic divide.
Yep.
Artificial intelligence is creating immense frictionless wealth for corporations at the top, while simultaneously threatening the 25 to 30% of the IT and BPO jobs that served as the bedrock of the modern Indian middle class.
Quicksand.
Right. Millions of graduates are pouring into a shrinking market without the necessary skills, and the traditional educational model is simply too slow and vastly too expensive to catch them before they fall.
But the Sovereign Human Initiative proposed by EON AI Ventures is attempting a monumental structural pivot. They are trying to flip that looming crisis of displacement into an abundance-driven opportunity.
By utilizing immersive 3D technology that acts as a real-time flight simulator, providing multi-language AI coaching that corrects mistakes instantly, and shattering the cost barrier from 1.5 million rupees down to just 35,000.
They're attempting something historic. They are aiming to transition millions of workers from vulnerable, dependency-based roles into empowered, tech-enabled proprietors in a fraction of the traditional time.
There is a quote near the end of the press release from Dan Lajerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures, that really captures the ultimate stakes of this endeavor.
Oh, I know the one.
He says, quote, "India's K-shaped economy proves that AI-driven productivity must serve the people, not erase their futures. The Sovereign Human Initiative transforms displacement into abundance, empowering India's workers to redefine their lives, their economy, and their civilizational moment."
It is a powerful paradigm-shifting vision. But this raises an important question, one that extends far beyond India's borders and touches the very foundation of the global economy.
Oh, what is it?
Well, if we assume the Sovereign Human Initiative actually succeeds, if millions of Indian workers successfully transition from being the dependent outsourced employees of the world into tech-enabled independent proprietors, what happens to the global corporate structure in the West?
Oh, man. That is a massive implication.
For the last 3 decades, Western corporations have relied heavily on that massive pool of cheap, dependency-based outsourced labor to maintain their profit margins and operate around the clock.
Right.
If that labor force suddenly evolves into a decentralized network of sovereign innovators who command their own value and sell their own AI solutions, does the West's current economic model fundamentally break?
Wow.
Will the rest of the world be forced to adopt this exact sovereign human model of continuous, immersive reskilling, or risk being completely outpaced and left behind by an empowered AI-native Indian workforce?
That is exactly the kind of structural shift we love to explore here. We started this deep dive looking at a massive, terrifying crisis, the skyscraper and the quicksand of the K-shaped paradox. And we're ending with a vision of a radically reimagined, democratized future of work that could change the entire global balance.
It's incredible.
It is absolutely a lot to mull over. Thank you, as always, for joining us on this custom deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep learning, and stay curious. We will catch you next time.